Hello, welcome everyone. This is Kelly DuMar for the Transformative Language Arts Association. It's Sunday night, June 10th. I'm speaking to you from the Boston area, and welcome to SPARKS. This is our 4 or 5 time a year free, open to the public session where I have the privilege of interviewing a really important person who's doing important transformative language arts work in the world and who has expertise on a particular subject that I know will be of vital interest to transformative language artists. And I'm so honored and thrilled tonight to have the opportunity to have a conversation with the poet Jennifer Jean, who is also speaking to us tonight from the Boston area.
Yes.
And with her work on empowering human trafficking survivors with Free2Write workshops. And so we're going to have a chance to talk to Jennifer both about her own poetry that she writes about trauma, as well as her work in giving to the community of human trafficking survivors with her Free2Write workshops, and what your mission is in the world of doing this really important work. And so I'm honored and thrilled that you're here with us tonight. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm so glad that all of you have come out, and I'm really interested to hear what you all have to say as well. Yeah.
Excellent. So we will be having an open mic following my interview with Jennifer. And then we'll have a discussion, any questions or just comments that anyone who's listening would like to make. And then we'll go into the open mic where we'll share a short poem or song or story. And I'm just looking quickly because I'm looking for the document I wanted to open up. I'm going to go ahead and formally introduce Jennifer to you because we're recording this call, and I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to really understand where Jennifer's coming and what your background is, Jennifer. Jennifer's a poet, an educator, and an activist, consummate literary citizen. Her debut poetry collection is The Fool, published by Big Table, and her poetry chapbooks include The Archivist and In the War. Her newest manuscript, titled Object, was a finalist for the 2016 Green Mountains Review Book Prize. Other honors include a 2018 Disquiet FLAD Fellowship, a 2017 Her Story is Residency, where she worked with Iraqi women artists in Dubai, a 2016 Good Bones Prize, and a 2013 Ambassador for Peace Award for her activism in the arts. As well, her poetry has appeared or is forthcoming in Poetry Magazine, Waxwing Journal, Rattle Magazine, Crab Creek Review, Denver Quarterly, Mud City Journal, Solstice, Pangyris, and more. She's poetry editor of the Mom Egg Review and managing editor of Talking Writing Magazine and co-director of Morning Garden Artist Retreats. Jennifer teaches Free2Write poetry workshops to trauma survivors, and she teaches writing at Boston area universities. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction.
Wow. You've got a lot going on, and
yeah,
it's all very exciting. Let me just see. I'm going to open up my next audience. So what I want to do to start with is Jennifer's written an amazing poem called Bird. It was published in Rattle. And it is a poem that she has dedicated to survivors of abuse and trafficking residing at the Breaking Free Safe House in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I thought it would be great to have Jennifer read this poem, and then I'd like to ask her some questions about it. And as we begin to understand this poem, how that relates to the work that you do with abuse survivors and Free2Write workshops, and how then let's translate that, because I know we have people on the call, and I know we will have people listening later on who are doing transformative language arts work with different groups, talk about some of the what you call the politics of empathy and working with these kinds of groups, and talk about, well, what is it good to know? What is the best practices way to approach doing trauma work with this population and with any trauma-related population? So I know you've also have a lot to share about that. Let me just shut up for a minute and let you say anything else that you would like to say in terms of introduction of yourself.
I think that you were very thorough, so I don't have anything to add. I do want to just launch into the poem, and I have a usual introduction for this poem, but I'm not going to give that. I just want to see what questions you have, and then if you don't get to that, I'll add to it at the end. That's okay?
Yes, but let me just ask can everybody, can you unmute yourselves and tell me if for any reason you guys cannot see the poem on the share screen? You should be able to be looking at the poem right now. Is everybody seeing it? I'm going to take the silence as affirmation that everyone is seeing the poem. So good. Let's see if I can even zoom in a little bit more. I wanted everybody to be able to actually view the poem because it's one thing to take it in through our ears, and then it's another thing to actually get to see the words on the page. But if you want, we'll have Jennifer read the poem at least twice. So if you want to close your eyes and just hear the poem spoken by Jennifer first, maybe that would be, sort of take it in with your eyes closed. And then we'll get the chance to hear it one more time while we're looking at it on the screen. Anytime you're ready to start, Jennifer.
Okay. Bird, rock wren, godwit, bobolink. What are we looking at? What's beaked and broken free from a classic iron bell cage with a blown out hole opposite a latched door? No thickened keratin could peck that well. No claw-turned fist busted up that joint. Inside she was key. She was cheap. She was a flipped bad finger. Now this bird wings as every bird, stepping out of the life with no credit, no reference, and a little self-love. What are we looking at? A second wind. The flight inside the creature that is the holy eternal verb, is who bent the metal, is the mother of a lighter bone, the kind that terror cannot allow. So shall I read it one more time? Do you all want that?
Yes, yes, please. And this time maybe if you did close your eyes as I did and really heard it, took it in that way. Now, maybe we could actually read along with you, Jennifer.
Okay. Bird, rock wren, godwit, bobolink. What are we looking at? What's beaked and broken free from a classic iron bell cage with a blown out hole opposite a latched door? No thickened keratin could peck that well. No claw-turned fist busted up that joint. Inside, she was key. She was cheap. She was a flipped bad finger. Now this bird wings as every bird stepping out of the life with no credit, no reference, and a little self-love. What are we looking at? A second wind. The flight inside the creature that is the holy eternal verb, is who bent the metal, is the mother of a lighter bone, the kind that terror cannot allow. Okay.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Really powerful, beautiful poem, and so amazing to hear you read it in your voice. I do have a number of questions. Let me ask you first, perhaps you might tell us a little bit about your process in where this poem came from for you. How did it begin to get made?
Okay, so you had mentioned in my bio that I have a manuscript titled Object. It could also be looked at as pronounced object, as in no. And so that has many layers. And in that, which I'm not going to get into right now, but in that manuscript, I wanted to write about various safe houses where human trafficking survivors could find refuge and some place where they can feel like they could get some healing and some community. And I wanted to write about these places because I felt like those are things that aren't as well known about this issue regarding human trafficking. People know that this is something that happens out there in the world. Usually most folks that I've talked to think it's something that doesn't happen in America, and of course it does. And so because it happens here, we have, thankfully, these homes, these refuges for women, and actually also for young boys. There are refuges. So I wanted to write about these places and, pay homage to them. So that's what this poem is essentially about. And the kind of poem it is what's called an ekphrastic. So I don't know how many of you know about that term, what an ekphrastic is. So I'll explain it. What it is a poem written about a work of art. So when I was exploring the various safe houses that are existing throughout America, I came across the Breaking Free Safe House, and I was looking at their website, and their symbol is exactly what I describe here in the poem. And that's what makes this an ekphrastic poem, because in the poem I'm describing this symbol that they have, where it's a bit of a work of art, where there's an iron bell cage and there's a busted out space in the cage, and you see a bird flying out of it, and that's symbolic of the women that are coming and staying at this safe house. So I wanted to write about that. I was inspired by the image and by everything that they do at Breaking Free. So that's the the genesis of the poem, or at least the beginning of it.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. So and I'm very interested in the idea that it was an ekphrastic inspiration. Now, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about what I feel like I know. I feel solidly about the poem.
Okay.
And what maybe I'm questioning a little bit, that I'm not totally understanding. And or what's really connecting for me with the poem. So the word key is one of the images that comes out so strongly to me in the poem, that gives me a grounding in where's the shift happening in the poem. So I get the sense we've got a woman who is caged, the caged bird in the caged life of sex trafficking, being like that bell cage, obviously. And then that there's a hole that has been blown out somehow opposite the locked door. So there is a key, right, but the key has not actually, it's not no literal key has been used, obviously, that the key has not been applied to the door.
Right.
The key is in the woman or the bird. That beautiful line, these incredible lines that speak to me so strongly. The flight inside the creature that is the holy eternal verb. Would you tell us a little bit more about that? To me, I get the sense that that's the key to what you're getting at here in this poem. It says, how the hell do you get out of the cage? And the life of the sex trafficking. And I get the sense that one of the things you're sort of referring to here through these images is that it has to do with somehow that shift inside the woman, the girl.
That's it exactly. She is the key. And I don't think the poem necessarily goes into how she can get that empowerment to become the key to escape. I think the poem only is getting at the fact that she is the key. And a place like Breaking Free, so this might be outside the realm of the poem, but from my point of view, a place like Breaking Free and people who support these kinds of places are what empowers the woman to get out. You know, she would need, from all that I've, studied and through interviews and everything that I've encountered on this journey of exploring human trafficking, especially sex trafficking, I've noticed that the women that want to escape need help. They definitely need help. Yeah, and that's where it comes from. But they need help, but it has to come from inside of them still. Okay, so a different kind of voice telling them you're worthy, and you're lovable, and you can do this, and encouragement. But it's not, no matter, I'm sure all of you out there know, no matter how many times people tell you this, if you don't, something in you doesn't turn and accept that, and it's not going to break you free from whatever you need to break free from. But it is what's inside of her or us, if we're trying to break out of things, that makes that happen. I hope I'm being clear with that. Yeah, this is just, it's inside of her, but she definitely needs this place within which to community or other assistance to help make it happen and help it emerge from her.
I think that, yes, I think that is really, really clear. And so the other thing that really I connect with, that's very, very clear and beautifully elicited, I think, is stepping out of the life with no credit, no reference, no references, no reference. That sense of, this is truly going from the known into the unknown, going into the familiar into the unfamiliar, going into the unprepared. Yeah, the stepping off a cliff kind of, but really it's winging off into this flight into the unknown. It's so evocative of the level of profound risk is involved in leaving the trafficking life, I imagine. And so this is also how the safe houses serve the woman as she makes that transition, is that because she has to leave without, she's not taking anything with her beyond that internal little bit of self-love.
Right. And hopefully something that's a little bit beyond. I mean, one thing I was inspired about from all these places that I researched and some of the places that I visited is that they all had something that that acknowledged that there's something beyond themselves, human power, and they didn't always call it God, but very often they did. But whatever it was something else that's or love or something that's beyond. And that's also something I wanted to evoke in this poem, because that's what this place was about and what many other places have been about. And just, I thought, oh yeah, I want to put that in there, something with the, I have a lowercase h, but holy, something else that's going on that, the sort of, it's miraculous that they can do that. They can do what how you put it, we're leaving everything behind and transitioning. It's a miracle when it happens. So, yeah.
Yes, a miracle, this idea of this miracle being freed. So, what is so preoccupying, I think, in this beautifully constructed poem, the idea that it's this hole that is blown open, that who, is it important? I think I'm not asking you to explain your poem. What I'm asking is for you to just maybe tell us a little bit more about, to sort of, because we're here to talk about the theme.
Right.
Could you, is it important we understand how the metal got bent open? I think that's one of the questions that is a takeaway for me. who bent the metal is the mother of a lighter bone. So that's still a very mysterious what's going on there for me. And I'm not asking you necessarily to explain it, but maybe to just talk a little bit about, well, what does this part have to do with getting away from sex trafficking?
Well, what I was trying to go for at the end there is that I use the word verb.
Yes.
So action is needed. Movement is needed. And the antithesis of action is terror, actually. It's this paralysis. And those two things are sort of put next to each other as and juxtaposed as opposing forces, this fear. So for me, that was important. I don't know if I'm getting at what you're trying to say, what you're asking me about, but to me, it's something action-oriented. It has to be movement. It can't be, for anything to happen for a person in this kind of circumstance, there has to be momentum and motion and movement.
I totally get that. Yes, I get that. I totally personally get that. Okay, so I think part of what I'm wondering, though, Jennifer, is, and maybe this isn't important, but it's kind of got my curiosity. So could the metal have been bent from outside the cage? Because I hear what you're saying. This survivor has to decide to fly out no matter what, right? So we get that. That's where the action is. But how? I love the idea that this is maybe a mystery of how the cage got bent open. What's that force? And I think you're saying maybe it's just a mysterious force, how it is, because I was a little confused the first reading once or twice going through. Well, did the bird somehow? How did it get blown open? But I'm getting so preoccupied with that, and I don't think I really need to be. I think.
Well, the way it would be open, if we want to be even a little bit literal, the way a cage is opened it wouldn't be blown inward either. It would be someone would have a key and come and unlock the latch. Or maybe, sometimes there is no key, there's no lock on the latch. A human just lifts the latch and raises it. But that bird still has to make a decision to come out. If there's, if the bird is inside, again, being literal, they're blowing out a hole, the way that they're getting out is just blasting out. They're definitely wanting to get out. It's very clear that this creature, whether it has the capability to do this or not, in our viewpoint, is definitely wanting to get out. And there's evidence there. It's flying away from the situation of its own volition.
Yes.
Which is, what we're talking about right now definitely speaks to my teaching, and the way I approach the teaching, and how I, anything that I would share with anybody who would want to do this kind of work. I'm not going to go into it right at this moment because we're still with this poem, but it's definitely connected. This desire to do it on, to have that initial desire to make that step is very important, I think, in this work.
Well, let's. I think this is a very good transition point, and any of the listeners who have a question want to bring back to the poem, we absolutely can. But let's talk about this article, "The Politics of Empathy," which I think also really relates. Hopefully, everybody can see this on the screen. I'm not sure you can see it well enough. Let's talk about your work a little bit, and if you would share a little bit about, you talk in this about how you personally got involved in the work and what your own politics of empathy have been with that.
Right. So most people that are here haven't had a chance to look at that. Am I right about that?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, but you have it.
They're not aware of what I'm aware of, which is this idea of how you found your own connection to your sense of ability to use your own voice in the service of sex trafficking survivors.
Yes. So this is I started off with this project wanting to write about trafficking and objectification. I actually did not start off wanting to teach. That wasn't the impetus. So I wanted to write about it, explore it. And then in this article, I say that, you know, people started asking me, why are you doing this? And they would ask me if I was a survivor of trafficking. And I'm not, so I freely said I'm not.
Yeah.
And I wondered, though, why I kept getting that question. It was mystifying me, so I had to really figure it out. I had to figure out what it meant that this question was coming and why I was really doing it. And that led me to exploring trauma that I've had in my life. In this article, even, I say that, you know, I was in foster care for 7 years of my life. And, you know, there's been various exploitations that have happened for me. So this was, in a way, talking about trafficking, exploring, especially objectification as a topic, was a way in for me to get at my own stuff, because it's hard sometimes to just get directly at your own stuff. So, but I had to create guidelines because I didn't want to appropriate or further exploit people. So I decided that in the writing, I would create guidelines. And I would ask myself several questions. And I was trying to call up the article on my computer so I could say what those guidelines are.
I can get if you haven't been able to do that, I'm trying to make it bigger on the screen, and hopefully you can see them. So there's 4 of them: consent, content, edit, and give. Is that what you mean?
Yes. So the consent. So I make sure that if I'm writing about somebody, that I have their consent. And I did a lot of interviewing. And so, you know, I would ask the person before I interviewed, do you mind if I use this in a poem or an article? And they would tell me, you know, which was okay. And can I use your name or an initial? We would agree on an initial. So that's getting consent. And then also, if I did research, online research, I just decided that the person had likely given some sort of consent for the writer to utilize it. And so I would also, you know, be able to utilize that story. And most of the time I actually didn't end up doing that. If it's a personal story, it's someone I interviewed, or it was a composite character of many, many, many people where it's blurred in my writing. And then, so it's that consent. What was the second one?
Edit, content, and give.
So I also had decided, you know, what kind of content am I going to be discussing? Am I just going to, you know, sensationalize this material because it's easily sensationalized? And then I thought, no, I don't want to do that. So I need a guideline. And my guideline was, I will choose content that helps inform people, raise awareness for folks about this issue, that maybe empowers or inspires people in this circumstance, or you know, something along those lines. I really thought about the content, and hopefully very thoroughly. But even then, it's, you know, I'm still open when I go to readings and I read a poem. If I get feedback, I'm very serious about feedback I receive as regards content. And then the last thing is give. And so I decided at a certain point, after interviewing and writing about people, that, you know, the best way to help empower survivors is to help them tell their own stories, you know, and lead. And then also when I give readings or do events of any kind, lead people to their stories, because they are the original source of the material and of the pain, you know, and they're the experts, but also just the people who are needing the intention, not me. So, so yeah, that's what led me to teaching, because I'm a teacher anyways, a writing teacher. And then that led me to creating even more guidelines about how I would do the teaching too. So, but yeah, this politics of empathy, this is, that title comes from a panel that I did at the Associated Writers Program and Conferences, AWP. I did the panel with these other people who said that they would never take anyone's story for any reason. But when they heard me share, you know, I was curious what they were going to say when I shared with all of them what I've told you about my guidelines, and they were fine with it. At least these 5 people were. Most of them were people that were just had very different kind of guidelines. So
it was like a peer review, and it sounds like peer review is something that you do regularly with your work in this area, whether it's with your poetry or with your teaching.
Yes.
And your editing. You're always asking for feedback and
Right.
other points of view, and making sure that there's just not something that you haven't thought of, and
Right.
insensitive or inappropriate, or you're looking for the consequences. You're being careful of the consequences of what it is that you're putting out there.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And I also showed many of the poems to survivors too. So peers and folks who are concerned, and also administrators of safe homes, and just all kinds of folks. I didn't go over every single poem, but many of the ones that I just felt someone needs to look at this one. So, yeah.
Jennifer, take us inside, because I have a feeling the listeners are interested in this. So could you just take us inside your experience of what happens how do you run a particular group? Like, tell us what you do. You're going in, you're going to do a Free2Write session. And it sounds to me like part of your work is to help other people learn how to do a Free2Write session, or to apply the tools that you share in your workshops to their own work in trauma survivors or human trafficking survivors. Can you just sort of take us into what a Free2Write workshop would be like?
Yes. So I'm going to tell you about the current iteration, because it's through feedback has developed, and I don't have to go into how I did it originally and how it wasn't working in the beginning. But what I do right now that I do feel is working is I teach it as on the surface as any other poetry workshop that I would teach, okay? Which is to say, any other introductory poetry workshop. So I don't assume anyone knows how to write a poem, actually. And, I go over the 3 big elements of poetry writing, which is language, image, and line, and how to break into lines. And so on one level, when I'm teaching, it's just, this is an intellectual class. This isn't, it's on one level not a class about getting into your stuff, not a therapeutic class on one level. Okay, so we all have something that's bringing us together, this learning how to write a poem, and we look at example poems, and we write poems that are similar to those example poems, as exercises, and then they have some free writing time where they can write whatever they want to write in whatever way they want to. But they are learning about poetry writing throughout. So that's one level of what's going on. But what's different is that I always make sure I work with an existing organization. So I've gone to trauma recovery groups, safe homes, rehab centers. One was all men, actually. That it was not human trafficking, but it was a prison writing group of some kind. I forget what it was called. But they're all groups that are existing. So these folks all know each other. And there's an administrator there that knows them, that has more therapeutic background than I do, which I have none. And I don't assume or presume to have any. So they're there, and before we even, I even hold a class, I meet with that administrator or whoever's running the facilitator of the group, and have a lot of talks about what is that group like, what is their dynamic, what is their need, what is their education level, what are some things I can expect, what's the diversity in terms of race and class, and I go over everything with them so that I'm informed. And I don't speak to any of that, but I just let that inform me, let it sink in and inform, maybe the poems that I talk about, or just so that I'm knowledgeable when I'm going in. I'm not just going in blind.
Right.
And so I have those talks with them. And then also another difference beyond just teaching poetry is at the beginning of every class, we do meditation and a little bit of stretching. And recently I've been doing not just basic stretching like your normal stretching, but something called Qigong, which is Chinese healing movements that move the energy throughout the body. And the reason why I do that is because, when you've experienced, I'm hoping that many of you are familiar with The Body Keeps the Score, that book. And in that book, I can't remember the author's name. I think Vander Kolk is the name of the author.
Oh, yeah.
In that book, and also many other books, it's, and many other, well-known therapists say that, trauma is stuck in the body. We're a container of our trauma. And so in the beginning of these classes, because they're going to be writing possibly about their traumatic experiences, I make sure that in the beginning, we, including me as the teacher, we're all in our body. We're all grounded and we're all present and, present to what's going on. And since I started doing that, so much success, I have to say, with the classes. It's so much easier for people to be vulnerable and share their work and have fun with the work, regardless of the circumstance that we're in. But yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing. And then we close out, they share their poems, and we do another very, very brief breathing, and then I'm, the end of the class. So.
And I want to have us move momentarily into the Q&A, Jennifer, but
okay.
But that's a wonderful description, and I just know there's going to be questions, but I think one question I have for you before we move on, my sense is that this is a very passionate and committed process for you in doing this work, and that you do it really sympathetically, empathetically. And what is your sense of how this serves a group of trauma survivors? What's either your gut instinct or your cognitive certainty about what is the value for anyone participating?
Well, what I tell them in the class, and what's I think would be perfect to answer this, is that poetry is a container. Just a container, that's all it is. And you can put anything into that container. You can put your trauma into that container and you can take a look at it. And you can actually move things around, and you can expand it, you can slow it down, you can speed it up. It's just a thing, and it helps in that the trauma for an instant, can come outside of the self, and you can look at it and observe it dispassionately, hopefully, and think about it. And you can also share it with others, which is often what people want to do. They want to share. They want to be able to learn how to tell their stories so they can share their stories, not just learn how to tell the story and then it goes in a drawer. Most of these folks, I notice, want to share their story, even if it's in a way that's obscure, with obscure poetic language. They still want to share some kind of essence, maybe, of the story. And that's what the power of, I think, these kind of writing programs, including my own, can help people do, is separate from the trauma a little bit, which can help in conjunction with whatever else is helping empower them in life to transition out of the trafficking life or out of whatever trauma they're in. Poetry is one more thing that can help. It definitely cannot do all of any kind of work, any therapeutic work, not at all. But it is one kind of help.
I have to say, I'm so glad I asked that question, because I got goosebumps with your answer. really, I love that. I feel that is brilliant. Poetry is a container, and you can put your traumatic experiences, your experiences in it, and you can look at them, and how empowering that is, and how much that is for the individual. It's not for anybody else, but it's for the individual in the group. You can do this for yourself.
Right.
You know, and so I think that the essence of empowerment is in that brilliant metaphor that you're sharing through that work. I'm so glad I asked that question. But I'm not going to be selfish about it. It's my turn to be quiet and to see what questions you've generated, or comments. It doesn't have to be a question. I think this would be great. I'm going to just unmute everybody, and we're going to see if we can just hear each other. And if anybody, if we have trouble with any sound, I'll just mute you if I need to. Or you can also just mute and unmute yourselves when you're ready to speak. But Jennifer, thank you so much for that introduction. You know, I know that there's a million more things that we want to know, but who in the call or in the room would like to make a comment or ask a question?
I just wanted to say something about going back to the poem Bird. When you were talking about wondering what caused the blowout on the cage, and I was just thinking it actually seems appropriate that there's no explanation given, because every bird's story or every woman's story is different. So every person's way of getting out of that life happens in a different way. You know what I mean? Sometimes it might be through an organization helping, or it might be through an individual, or it might be through her own willpower. And so the fact that is the unanswered question in the poem is really appropriate, because there is no explanation needed. Every person who reads that can fill it in with whatever they want.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask, so are you working in any way with survivors, Amy, or?
I'm not right now, but it's been on my radar for a while. We have multiple anti-trafficking organizations here in Nashville, including Thistle Farms. I don't know if you guys have heard of Thistle Farms at all, but
yes,
an organization started by an Episcopal priest, Becca Stevens, and we have End Slavery Tennessee, which is like our hugest anti-trafficking organization in Middle Tennessee. And a more faith-based one is Rest Stop Ministries, which is in Lebanon, not far from here. And so it's been on my radar to get involved. I have young children, though.
Yeah.
And so my time has been really, taken by raising my kids. But they're both in school now. And I'm starting school this year as well for my certificate program. So I'm hoping to start getting involved in some kind of volunteer capacity, just to get to know the ropes with the different organizations, and just learn whatever I can. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for your comment too. And yep. The small kids transitioning away from that. It just, it happens. It happens that they do move on to their parts, and it frees us up. And I'm so excited for you with your new journey into your own continued learning. What else? Other questions, other comments?
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are, Paloma. Yeah.
Okay, great. So one thing that really touched me is the concept of poetry as a container. And I love that aspect of it is that, and I'm taking your words here, Jennifer, that you can put anything into it, you can expand it, look at it, rearrange it, share it with others. Something that really touched me is that you can do all of this with no consequences. And I've never experienced human trafficking, but I have experienced domestic violence. And in that setting of abuse, your fear, that terror, is so intense that you feel that everything has horrific consequences, that everything could cause a complete disaster. And so to be able to create that space through the form of poetry and see that another reality may be possible. It's just, sorry, my dog. The other reality right now is something's outside that's interesting to my dogs. Hey, buddy. Sorry, sorry. And that.
Hold on. Let me you till. Okay, maybe it's over.
Cross my fingers. That took me back to the part of the poem that really spoke to me. And I wrote down my thoughts about it, so I'm going to read them. And I put, terror has a capital. It's a proper noun. Not only will terror as a common noun prevent flight from violence, but terror, the proper name, the name, the ghost of abusers, will keep you in the cage. And so to be able to write a poem is you're out of the cage. Because you get that space between you and what happened. You can step back. And so anyway, that having experienced violence,
yes,
all that is very poignant and vivid to me.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And it speaks so much to the empowerment that happens through creativity and mediums of expression where you can find space.
I think that's really beautifully said, Paloma.
Yes.
Thank you. And my dogs had something to say about it as well.
They're backing you up. They're totally backing you up. Yes. The poetry is then out of the cage. Helps.
Yeah. If you can see, even if someone who is in that space where things are more raw, I'm very far removed from my abusive experience, then you can really see that if you can be free enough to write that poem, just that process.
Yes.
You're already out of the cage when you can create another reality or step back from that reality.
Yeah.
Whatever the poem expresses.
Yeah, I noticed that poetry is a good gauge for where you're at, more than even just, oh, I wrote a good poem and I want it published. Beyond that, it's just it can be a great gauge. Like, oh, look, I'm in this place now. And then you write the next poem. Oh, now I'm over here. This is interesting. And you're observing. So I'm kind of getting that from what you're saying, like jumping off of what you're saying.
Yeah, and you're out of that cycle of post-traumatic thoughts that can keep you spinning and keep you stuck. Is what's really poignant to me. And I think in my own experience, one of the most challenging aspects of moving far away from that person who was traumatized and everything's raw, in that process, it's challenging to feel that you're improving, that you're healing. It's really hard to see that within yourself when everything's acute.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so to realize that if you can sit down and write a poem, you're doing way better than you perceive that you are. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Yes.
You are. You are.
So,
But Paloma, let me ask you this, if that's okay. Have you had personally the experience of being able to write with a poem with other survivors, perhaps in a group experience?
not within a group experience where it's a stated purpose of the group.
Yes, right.
But inevitably, in most writing workshops I've been to, it comes up during the group that that most everyone there has had some sort of trauma that they're working to let go of.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And are you leading or hoping to lead writing groups for others as well, Paloma?
I am. I have never, I don't have a lot of experience with myself, and I have never shared a writing workshop where there was technique, guidelines for technique, only for free writing. And I've done that. I've taught a yoga class before, like we'll do some movement, 15 to 30 minutes, and then we'll move into a writing process and then share. And what I'm interested in, I'm taking a sabbatical from teaching yoga right now because I have so many other things going on in my life, and I just want to practice myself. And I just moved to Taos, so get settled and get a community. But I would like to blend yoga, a yoga practice, and follow that with a writing workshop. Maybe geared, like advertised, promoted for people that have experienced some sort of trauma,
Right.
Or maybe just teach it as for, what's the word? All inclusive, not with the stated purpose of dealing with trauma. So that's my plan, but I'm just taking a break from teaching. I taught yoga in drug and alcohol treatment centers for a year and a half, and I just wanted to take a break from that and replenish.
Right.
So, yeah.
Thanks for telling us, sharing so much about what you got, what you're doing, and also for stating what you want to do so clearly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's always exciting to hear someone like be really clear. I want to do this. You've both done that, Amy and Paloma, as well. Okay, how about if we move into our open mic? And for anybody, I think that everybody who's still here, I think we lost Elma because she left me a message saying, sorry, someone was at the door and she had to deal with something. Thank you to you and Jennifer. So that she chatted that to me. So would anyone want to volunteer to go first to just read something? It doesn't have to have anything to do with human trafficking, surviving, or anything else, but it can be anything you would like to read of your writing.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Paloma.
No, I'm fine. I was just going to say I'm still trying to find where my poem is on my iPad, so I'm not quite ready right now.
Okay, why don't you keep looking for that? We're counting on it. Amy, how do you feel about going? Are you ready, or would you?
Okay, I've got mine.
Good.
Okay. This is called Stasis. I don't know if you want any background on it, or do you want me to just?
Paloma, I'm just going to mute you while Amy is going to read, okay? And then we'll put you back on. Yes, give us a little background. That's great.
Okay. This is called Stasis. It's I wrote it during a season when I was mourning. Basically, my husband and I lost our first daughter shortly after she was born, 3.5 months prematurely. And if she were still here, she would have just had her 10th birthday last month. And so this was this is just dealing with that. Stasis. In these days, my soul enters into a kind of stasis. Everything slows and stills and silences, not necessarily out of respect or honor or love, but more from a sense of dread, of terror, of fear. It brings my being to a halt. I am simultaneously present and absent, here and there, now and then. I am just waiting for your first breath and your last. Until then, my own breath, my own heart, still. I wait for you. I wait until I can breathe again. I wait until I can be again.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amy. Wow.
Thank you for letting me share.
Very moving. Paloma, are you ready? Jennifer?
Yes.
You want to do another one? I will also do one, but I'm ready for you to go if you want.
I have one about Thistle Farms, actually. Well, it's, I should say, inspired by Thistle Farms. So I was so happy, Amy, that you mentioned that. I love what they do there. And so it's very positive, and a lot of what I wrote about was like, you know, on the darker side. So this is one of the few positive poems, again, inspired by Thistle Farms. So I'll just read that really quick. It's called Thistle. Beloved of butterfly, tint of twilight, in the language of flora, she is regal, sometimes called spear or welted or blessed, sometimes melancholy or milk. She is every third grade girl tying her shoes, all knee bone and chin sharp, as tincture he cures buboes and baldness, stone, gravel. As warrior bloom, she defends the tribe of tartaned folk with her fierce burrs. Then we knead her into heel and shin. She is soft and clean, a delectable heart, centerpiece of sustenance and no weed. Oh, taste of celery, herb of witch. In war and peace, she is the finale field, the constant, gorgeous, bold soul of us, the eyes of us, the thriving. That's it.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I sent it to them, by the way, to the administrators, and they were like, "Oh, thank you." And yeah, it was nice to connect through poetry.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Is that one going to be in your anthology?
It is. It's in my manuscript, and it's also available as a broadside for free online through this place called Broadsided Press. So anybody can, you know, you can look at it. And if you like what the broadside looks like, you print it out, and it's there. Yeah.
Let's see. If you can send me the link, I'll send it in a follow-up with everybody, with the other things I'm going to send. That would be great, because I think that would be probably a great one for everybody to look at.
Okay.
Paloma has since raised her hand. I think we're ready for you, Paloma. Is that?
Oh.
You press. I keep. We keep going.
That's funny. Okay, so I'm gonna hope that my dogs do not bark again. And so the poem I'm going to read is I wrote it when I was writing my thesis for my bachelor's at Goddard College, and my thesis was on the title was "The Artist You Don't Know," and it's reclaiming and nurturing the creative soul after trauma. That was the gist of my thesis and focus. And so I wrote this poem, and I stole the artist. The line "The Artist You Don't Know" is from a Rumi poem, that kind of got the juices flowing for my whole project at Goddard, or it helped me narrow my focus. And it is about my grandmother. And there the dogs go. And the title is To Hold On to What Is My Own. The fight of my life, figuring out what is my own. You have to find it before you can hold on to it. It was bullied out of me before I could even recognize it. Granny, God love her, her intentions were good. And through all of the goodness she brought into my life, pulsated her intensity. Me, a delicate and sensitive child. Her, a tobacco-chewing, snuff-dipping, gun-shooting woman of the 1920s Florida flatwoods. What was my own? Overpowered, minimized, diminished in the presence of Granny's strength. What was my own? Nearly unrecognizable, unfathomable, unrecoverable, even 34 years after her passing. I don't have my Granny's intensity. Sometimes I wish I did. But then this journey, the journey of discovering and reclaiming what is my own, my creativity, would never have even been a twinkle in my eye. The journey of getting to know the artist I don't know, as Rumi puts it, but that I know has been there all along. Day by day, word by word, brushstroke by brushstroke, guitar chord by guitar chord, I get to know her. And I assure you, I will hold on to her fiercely with the intensity that my Granny would have.
Wow.
I love that.
Thank you.
Gosh.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
It's the first time I've shared it with anyone other than people at school.
Oh, wow.
So see what I mean, Jennifer? I told you our open mic app is like, very cool. Okay, I am going to actually read one that was published yesterday, and so it's kind of low-hanging fruit, and I've been busy, so it was the first thing on my mind, so I'm going to read that. It's called Samara. It's about the maple wings that whirly bird, beautiful maple wings that come and twirl off the branches and land in the spring, possibly in some year in the future to become rooted as a new tree. Samara. Ruby-tipped and earthbound, wings flung by any breeze in May, twirling, whirring, land so artfully on flakes of white-black bark, a broken birch, green scrim of swamp, or on a silvered boulder. Lady slippers thrill mid-May, thrusting up through moldy, heaving, lifeless. At 9, I beg my mother for ballet. Slippers I must own, but graceless at the bar, I fail to hold first any position. Skip a second class and third and even to this day suffer the tug of such snugged delicacy. Those soles, my one quick peek, astonished feet. Summer night spent at the lake, my earthbound mother out too late when we're teens. She's tumbling silly on her way to bed across our cabin floor. She's tilted after poker, playing her brothers and sisters. Help her find her feet, her cot, tuck her into. My first time drunk at 12, a starry August night. Fluidity, I want too much at once. Guzzle a bottle, tilt and sputter. Spun, I jerk, and Sandy, tallest, handsome of the beach. Suntan god of laurel by the boulders, beached, we kiss. Sandy kissed, I'm goddess of the lake and looser, queen of the bar. But stumbling up our graveled road, giggled and swirl-field, whirled and falling, fell, and Sandy heaves me clumsied up and over his shoulder, my body sacked. High-heeled, mid-20s, a last time drunk, spill a pitcher of beer, fell off a stool, blindly drive away from the bar, wreck all the rims of my mother's good tires on a median strip. The cop who sees I'm only clumsy accidentally lets me walk away without a scratch. Ice water at weddings, any necessary dances, is a brittle drink for quenching thirst. Midwinter on an icy brook, look, frozen wings, shape of a bird, stiffed with cold and poised for flight.
Wow. That was great.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Birds and birds. A different take on birds and wings.
Oh, where was that published? I'm just curious.
In Sky Island Journal, which is actually based in New Mexico, not far from where you are, Paloma. A lovely journal, Sky Island. When I saw that they were in New Mexico, that's what it said. Oh, I'm going to submit to them. I just love New Mexico so much. I'm feeling lucky with this journal. So anyway, wow. Okay. So one other thing I want to do. So you see what I mean about our open mic? I love this part of the night. It's like, okay, and now we get to close off our evening and head to bed with these beautiful voices and poems resonating in us with such poignancy. I'm going back to open one more document. That's what I want. Yep. Okay, so let me just share screen one more time. And hope I'm getting to the right thing. Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to show Jennifer's poetry book, The Fool. This is available for purchase. I'm going to send links in an email, a follow-up email. Just wanted to let you know that that book is available if you want to know more about Jennifer's poetry. And Jennifer, what is the best way for anyone to learn more about you specifically? Your website is?
It's fishwifetales.com.
Okay.
So fish, wife, tales, and then .com. So everything about me is there. I just hoard or archive might be a better word, everything. So yeah, books, publications, events that I travel to, it's all there.
Excellent. And I'm gonna, again, you don't have to remember everything, people. I'm gonna also put this in the follow-up email, but it just occurs to me, I want to say one more quick thing. I'm gonna go to the TLA website very quickly and mention that, let me see if I can share screen and show you that.
One quick thing before you're sharing, I can't believe I forgot the Free2Write website. There's also a Free2Write website that we have that I want you all to check out. So can I tell you is it all right?
Absolutely. Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
So it's free, F-R-E-E, the number 2, and then write, W-R-I-T-E, .weebly.com. I hope I got that right. I think I might have gotten that wrong now that I'm saying it. It might have to be Free2Write poetry. Actually, I'm going to check on my own.
Okay.
It's free2writepoetry.weebly.com, so I got it wrong. Free, number 2, write poetry.weebly.com. So sorry about that.
Okay. No problem. And again, I'll have those links. So I just want to bring your attention, everybody, very, very quickly to, we have the annual Power of Words conference is sponsored by the Transformative Language Arts Network, and it's going to be at Goddard College, again, October 12th through 14th. And you can find out about that on their website too. I'm presenting a workshop there on playback theater and poetry, actually, with my daughter. There's workshops going on all weekend, and you may or may not know about that already, Paloma, because you're an alum, but whatever. So just to let you know that that's coming up in October, and we are returning to Goddard. The conference has been in many places over the last few years, and it's going back to actually the campus of Goddard College in Vermont, Plainfield, Vermont, for that weekend. And what a way to come up and get up to Vermont really inexpensively, relatively. We stay right in the heart of Vermont during foliage season, and to be at Goddard for that. So just wanted to put the plug out for that, because CLA is such a great organization. And, well, I just couldn't be more moved and honored tonight, and so nice to get to know you better, Jennifer, and to go through your poetry and your process and learn so much. And then also the benefit of just hear from you, Amy and Paloma, your beautiful poems and your questions and comments, really deepening this experience for one and all. So I really thank you.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. It was fantastic. And I'm so glad to meet you, Paloma and Amy, and anyone else in the recorded world. Feel free to contact me at all. You can look up the websites, and the contact information is there. I would love to hear from anyone who wants to know more about teaching trafficking survivors or trauma survivors. I definitely want to connect.
Excellent. And so we will do our again, I'll have all these links in the follow-up email I'll send to Paula, who's going to put everything together. And the recording, when it's done, you will get an email notice that it's ready and for your viewing and sharing as you will. So thank you for coming, and stay in good health, and good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Jennifer. Going to end the recording and end the night.